Hello! In this video, we are going to learn how to make homemade Play-Doh using just a few simple ingredients. Now this won't have quite the same texture as a store-bought Play-Doh might, but it's still super fun to squeeze and play with, especially if you're anything like me and you like to have something to do with your hands. So there are a few basic ingredients we'll need to make our Play-Doh. That's flour, salt, vegetable oil, and water. You're also going to need one large bowl, as well as some measuring cups, which we'll go over a bit later. Start by gathering your ingredients and supplies. Get your flour, your salt, some vegetable oil. You certainly don't need this much. You'll also want a small bowl for mixing dry ingredients. You'll also want to have a tablespoon. Mine is pretty fancy, and it's an all-in-one sort of deal. Kind of fun. Ideally, it's nice to have two different size measuring cups, one in the half cup size and one in the fourth cup size. Of course, if you don't have both of these, you can always use one or the other, and just do the math accordingly. Start by scooping a half cup of flour. And again, if you don't have a half cup measuring cup, you can always use 2 1/4 cups. Then you'll want to get your salt. You'll need a tablespoon of salt, which you're going to add directly to your flour. Once you have your dry ingredients added, your flour and your salt, mix them all together. You shouldn't be able to tell flour from salt or salt from flour once you've got it all mixed. Now let's start in on our wet ingredients. So start with 1/4 cup of warm water. And if you don't have a fourth cup, you can always use half of a half cup. Go ahead and put your wet ingredients in your big bowl. Another wet ingredient you'll need is 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. Go ahead and measure out your vegetable oil and pour it in with your water. You can also add food coloring if you want. I decided to add some orange gel food coloring. Now, regular food coloring will work as well. I just would recommend not using as much. Now you'll want to stir together your wet ingredients. Now, oil and water have different densities, so they naturally want to separate, but you want to get them as similar looking as possible. It should become more difficult to distinguish oil from water and water from oil. Now we're going to want to add our flour. I like to do this slowly. I find that when I do it very quickly, I get a really bumpy Play-Doh texture, whereas if I add my flour in slowly and stir and stir and stir, I get a much smoother final consistency, which is a lot more fun and pleasant to work with. I generally add 2 to 3 spoonfuls at a time. Keep stirring. Be sure to get all of the flour from the sides of your bowl as best as you can. You really want to get all of that mixed in there. Again, you don't want the ingredients to be distinguishable. You shouldn't be able to tell your wet ingredients from your dry ingredients. Right now, this color orange and this texture reminds me a lot of baby food. Just keep stirring, just keep stirring, 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 stirring. Now you'll start to see your Play-Doh mixture start to clump together once you get a good amount of flour in there. That's what you want. But we're not quite done yet, although we're close. Add a little bit more flour here, and a little bit more in a second, but we're coming up on the fun part where we get to get messy. At this point, once the Play-Doh has started to lump together, I like to grab it with my hands. Now it's still really sticky, so it's going to stick to your fingers. If you look at my fingers, it kind of looks like I've got sticky Cheeto dust all over them, huh? Now we're going to put some flour on a flat countertop surface, and we're going to take as much of our sticky Play-Doh mixture as we can and we're going to put it right on top of this flat surface, getting the flour on both sides and getting as much of our Play-Doh from our bowl as we can. And this part's super fun. Now that we've got this flour on the outside, we need to mix it into the rest of our Play-Doh. So keep grabbing that flour from your flat surface and keep mixing it in. The goal is that it should no longer stick to your fingers. That's how you know that you have enough flour. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on top here since this Play-Doh is still sticking to my fingers. And we're just going to keep playing with it until we get that flour mixed in. Again, you shouldn't be able to see any flour in your Play-Doh mixture. It should be all one color. You shouldn't really be able to see any white. As we can see now, the Play-Doh isn't really sticking to my fingers anymore, which is exactly what we want. Even though I've still got Play-Doh on my fingers from earlier, we can tell that this ball isn't super goopy because it's not sticking to my hands. And of course, be sure to tidy up as you go. So wash those hands when you get that sticky Play-Doh on there, and wash your countertop surface, especially if you're putting flour on it. It's also a good idea to rinse any bowls that you've used. Make sure that they go in the sink. I'm just going to take care of mine right away because this is all food items. It's super easy to wash off. Go, we took care of all of our dishes. Now let's clean our countertops. I like to start with a wet rag, and I scoop any materials that are left over on the counter into my hand and not onto the floor. And then I throw those away. Then I'll give the counter another good wipe down and put away all of my ingredients. So here's all the Play-Doh I've made. I find that if your Play-Doh sits for a while without being in a Ziploc bag or in a Tupperware, it can feel kind of crusty on the outside, but you can fix this really easily just by playing with it, kneading it a little bit, stretching it. Let's have some fun. So there you go, there's some homemade Play-Doh. Just takes a few simple ingredients, some flour, salt, vegetable oil, and water. This is a super fun and easy project. I hope you have some fun making it and playing with it. Bye, everybody.